I didn't grow up religious. Not at all. My father wasn't a religious man. My mother died when I was young, and my father didn't like to talk about her, so I can't say what her beliefs were. My grandmother, that is to say my father's mother, went to church every Sunday, but didn't talk about God outside of those four walls. None of her children cared about religion. I've always wondered why that is, but I missed my chance to ask my father. I have a feeling he wouldn't have answered anyway. I guess it's where this whole thing starts. My father. I was in my late 30s when he got lung cancer. It wasn't surprising, being as he was a lifelong smoker. About 2 packs a day since he was 11. One of the few details about his life that he shared with me. I was the one who took care of him as the disease progressed. I have 12 brothers and sisters. Yes, you read that number correctly. But they're sort of scattered about the country now. I live just down the street from him, so it made sense for me to pick up the bulk of the work. I ended up moving in with him near the end, so he and I spent a lot of time together. Something about death tends to make people open up. Maybe it's because they know their time is so limited that they need to get out their thoughts and histories now or risk losing them forever. My father, however, was not a typical man. He never did much talking about himself, not even in those final days. Lest you misunderstand, let me tell you that my father is a good man. He loved us, even though he had a tough time showing it. He simply didn't care much for nostalgia. Reliving the past didn't hold any charm for him. He thought it was a waste of time. I tend to agree, which is why I haven't told anyone this story. But now that my time is drawing near, now that I'm knocking on death's door, I find that I'm overtaken with this common urge to tell someone, anyone, about the significant moment in my life. The one thing that matters. It's somehow more important than my wife, children, our life, our memories. I don't know why it matters, but it does, and someone needs to hear it. I suppose my father and I are different in that way. Anyway, I digress. My father was dying of cancer, and as death drew near, he began to act a bit strange. Maybe I shouldn't have been so surprised when I saw him pick up my grandma's old Bible, but I really was. Dad had nothing but contempt for priests and churches, and he never talked about God in the good book. But those last few months saw him sitting on the porch as the sun set, poring over those pages like they might waste away in front of him otherwise. I only asked him about it once. He told me as much as I was likely to ever get out of him. Danny, that's my name. But Dad hadn't called me that since I was a kid. I was always Daniel to him. Danny, there's a lot that I don't understand in this world. I've never pretended to know everything. Most of the things I don't understand I don't pay much mind to. But lately I've been thinking, maybe I was wrong to do that all along. Maybe just because something can't be understood well, it doesn't mean we shouldn't try. When your mother passed, she said. His eyes got far away then, a little glazed over as though he couldn't remember what she'd said. What did she say? I asked. Maybe I should have let him forget it. I suppose some people might think it was cruel of me to ask, but he never talked about Mom, see, and I can't deny that I was curious about her and their life together. I could see his eyes clear and his face turn grim. I knew he remembered, even as he lied to me. I forgot. I didn't push him. Pushing at Dad was like pushing at a brick wall. The days passed by. Dad got sicker and sicker. He spent more time with that Bible, until one day it fell out of his hands, and that was it. He went downhill fast from there. He was awake when he passed. That sort of pained me. I always felt he deserved to go in his sleep. Seems more peaceful that way, and Dad was a peaceful man. Oh well, it is what it is. So I sat next to him, and even held his hand as it happened. He spoke a few quiet words to me, words just for me and nobody else. Words that I won't relate here. My siblings were asleep. About 9 had made it down to the old house when I phoned to let them know Dad had taken a turn for the worse. I wanted to wake them, but he asked me not to. Not for this. It was a mercy for them, I think. He would have extended the same courtesy to me if he could, but he knew I wouldn't leave him alone. I couldn't. So he struggled through his final breaths. the hospice nurse sitting to the side holding back tears. Much to my surprise, they'd grown fond of each other, as fond as Dad ever got of anyone outside the family. His eyes started to slip shut, and I found myself holding my breath for just a moment. And then something strange happened. His eyes popped back open, his jaw widened, as though he wanted to speak, or maybe to scream, but I didn't think of that at the time. I only thought how odd it was that he was staring at something neither Annie, the nurse, nor I could see. I thought maybe he was seeing Mom or something. Now isn't that funny? I guess I'm the romantic of the family. I couldn't let that moment go. I leaned down and whispered in his ear. "What is it, Dad? What do you see?" His lips moved soundlessly for a moment, his eyes unwavering as they stared somewhere around the ceiling. I waited patiently until he croaked out a single word. Leviticus. I was sure I misheard. Leviticus? Now, I may not have been religious, but I knew that was some book in the Bible, even though I didn't know much of what it was about. The moment to ask questions, however, had passed. Dad lay stone cold on the bed, and Annie was crying quietly, and that was the end of that. We buried Dad 2 days later. Some of my siblings were angry I didn't wake them to say goodbye, but the truth was, we'd all spent the last few days saying goodbye. Dad wanted a peaceful death, and that was the best I could do for him. Once all the family drama had settled down, life went back to normal. I went back to my house down the street and sold the family home. It's changed hands a few times since then. A nice Chinese couple lives there now. Sometimes they invite me over for dinner, especially now that Tanya has passed and the kids are all grown. They're good people. Ah yes, Tanya was my wife. We met about 3 years after Dad died. She and I had 3 beautiful children together, 2 boys and a girl. They come back to visit me often. We have a truly beautiful family. She died just last year from a heart attack. It was hard on all of us, but we pulled through. We keep trucking along just like my dad did. I think it's in our blood. During all these years, I was never a religious man. I looked a little into Leviticus after my dad's passing. Asked a few friends about it. It was a bunch of old laws for a long-dead civilization. It was my understanding that most Christians didn't spend too long reading about Leviticus. They sort of glossed over it, or cherry-picked a quote or two to make a point. It always made me wonder why my dad picked that book over any other. Truth be told, reading Leviticus depressed me. It sounded almost like a hell on earth, with all the talk about uncleanliness and rituals and stoning. It turned me off from further explorations into the Bible. That's how things remained until just a few months ago. I'm in my 80s now, and I think I'm going to go soon. I can feel it deep in my bones that my time here on Earth is almost up. I don't mind that. I lived a good, full life. I love my family, and I wouldn't change anything. Well, maybe I would change one thing. See, lately I've been having these dreams. No, not dreams. I guess that's disingenuous. Better just come right out and say it. I've been having nightmares. Bad ones. Terrible ones. In my nightmares, I'm in some kind of desert surrounded by miserable, dying people. They are people hunted by something. What, I cannot tell. I see people calling out prayers of desperation as their children wither away in the sun. I see public executions by the community leaders. Men and women plagued by sin. Many of them dying for sins they didn't commit. I don't know how I know this, but I do. I see my mother. I've never seen her face so clearly as I do in my dreams. Not even when I'm looking at photographs. I see her dying in childbirth, just like in real life when my sister Lizzie was born. I see her bleeding out onto the sand, and I hear mutterings in the wind. Something about the blood of the unclean. I see my father holding her corpse, refusing to leave her side until her body has rotten away, and he has succumbed to heat and dehydration. I see them die together in a way that wasn't possible in reality as I knew it. I see their pain, and I can feel it, as though it's my birthright. As I watch them die, I hear something come up behind me. Something shaking the ground as the others run and hide. Something powerful and terrible and hungry. It sighs on me, its breath icy cold, just as I wake up. Sometimes when I open my eyes, I can still feel that cold breath on my neck. Since the dream started, I've taken to reading my grandmother's Bible. My father left it for me in his will. I've read the whole thing twice over now, but my eyes keep coming back to Leviticus. I don't know why I keep reading it. It just makes the nightmares worse. Maybe I'm looking for some kind of meaning behind them, behind my father's last moments. Maybe I'm looking for reassurance, although what kind of reassurance I can't say. That I lived a good life? That I was a good man, father, husband, and son? I really don't know. All I know is that I can't put it down. I've got the whole thing memorized now. I only have a few days left, and I can feel it now as sure as anything. I've been thinking my final thoughts over these last few weeks, and one keeps resurfacing despite my best efforts to push it down. I once thought that Leviticus represented a kind of hell on earth. But what if I was wrong? Perhaps it's true that Leviticus is hell, but maybe I was wrong about it being on earth.